Welcome, and thanks for listening to this week's episode of
The Milk Production.
The Milk Production.
Welcome to the Milk Production. I'm Russ Rakestraw, full-time dad, really part-time golfer, and when I get a chance, I sell technology to the government. I'll be your co-host today. I know as much about breastfeeding as your average everyday dad, but I get the pleasure of being married to a lactation consultant. Why don't you introduce yourself, Megan?
Well, I feel like that's not true. I mean, we have 5 children between the two of us.
Yeah,
so
maybe not everyday dad.
You've had quite some exposure.
We'll call me slightly above average.
Average advanced.
Yeah, average advanced. Not rookie.
Yeah. Okay, I'm Megan Selke. I am an internationally board-certified lactation consultant, mother to 5 beautiful boys, one of which turned 2 yesterday, the other of which is entering his teens tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's just, that's a lot. I do lactation consultant things for money, and I watch my children play soccer for fun.
All right.
So I have had some interesting dialogue with a few of my families who have some concerns about the cow's milk protein allergies, and one of them has turned out to be fairly sure they don't have a cow's milk protein allergy. These are my current moms that I'm working with. But the baby does have, colic and colic-like symptoms. Colic's an interesting word. Gassiness, fussiness, obvious internal distress. Mm-hmm. And so I take probiotics myself, right? I take probiotics myself. I believe in them, which is interesting because I feel like I'm really going on a tangent here, but our guy, Dr. Gregor.
Yeah.
He's kind of like, well, if you eat a healthy diet.
Look him up. How not to die.
Yeah.
We are in no way compensated for that.
How not to diet.
How not to diet.
What was the other one that I just read? Oh, what is it? Like how to live long or something? What is it?
Anyway, Dr. Gregor, good stuff.
Yeah, he's wonderful. So anyway.
However, be prepared to get the full-on vegan pitch when you're reading his stuff.
Well, he doesn't pitch it. That's the thing. It's
he just
research.
Talks about how it's beneficial. I don't do it. Megan does it. I don't do it. I try to follow his guidelines, but I have to have a steak every now and then.
Every now and then.
Would have one every day if I could.
Well, I'm not a full-fledged vegan by any means, and I would say I'm most days probably vegetarian, but the weekends sometimes change the course of things. Anyway, we've really digressed here. My point is he uses a lot of, he goes through inordinate amounts of research, has a team,
Dr. Gregor.
Right, has a team of researchers, and they just pour through it, and they consolidate everything they can and just kind of distill what they can to make these nutritional recommendations. And his recommendation is if you are eating, a largely vegan diet and getting, your good quality fruits and vegetables and grains, you're taking care of the prebiotics and the probiotics and all the things, and so you don't really need to worry about it. But so I digress into that because that's for the adults, right? What's interesting and what happens in breast milk, which is, you sent that really awesome video, which inspired me to sort of dig into this subject. Mm-hmm. There's all sorts of things that we do for our baby newborns to get their gut microbiome going in the right direction. And so,
can we just pause for a second? Microbiome. Mm-hmm. I think it's funny that when we talk about bacteria, mm-hmm. typically, mm-hmm. we're talking about something nefarious, something that will hurt you, mm-hmm. right? And the reality is when we talk about the microbiome, mm-hmm. we're talking about bacteria. Mm-hmm. And we need bacteria, and there are ways to grow bacteria in your body, the kind of bacteria you need, the kind of bacteria that do everything from make you feel like you have enough energy mm-hmm. to, making sure that you're not necessarily putting on weight. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about the microbiome, right, we're talking about, not just developing a good bacteria because you're a botanist and you want to see good things grow. You're talking about giving yourself the proper amount of energy, about regulating your weight, regulating your mood, and all of this stuff that happens in your body can happen in your baby's body as well. So I just think it's funny. We use the term microbiome, but really what we're talking about is bacteria, good bacteria.
Yeah, that sort of
could be bad depending on what you feed.
Yeah, exactly. Depending on what you feed. And so really, where I think a lot of people get passionate, I think there are a lot of ways to enter the discussion on passionately choosing breast milk or formula. But it's interesting to think that the first foods that you give your baby in those early days can determine their near-term and sort of medium-term microbiome. And what's interesting about breast milk is that it has a microbiome of its own. And so there are all these, ways that babies expose themselves to good and bad bacteria in the early days. And I would love to hear what are some ways you think bacteria enters, but quiz of the day, what are some ways that you think bacteria enters baby's body?
So I kind of cheated on this one, but you mentioned the video that I provided that I actually watched. So I have learned, so cool, that as a breastfeeding mom, your body actually triggers the transport of bacteria from your gut up to your nipple and actually feeds your baby your own gut biome. Now, I think typically when we have the bacteria, like E. coli is a good example, right? When we have bacteria that enters our body in places where it's not supposed to be in the gut, that's usually a problem. But in this case, the body's designed to do that. And I just think that is so cool. I think it's so cool that there's this whole triggering mechanism that says, hey, pack your bags, gut biome, you're going to baby's mouth.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, there's so many interesting things about it, but if you think about the intestines, inherently need to be a closed off space, keeping all the food and waste and bacteria and everything that's thriving in there and or being moved along contained. Otherwise, we would die of sepsis. But in this case, some proteins go down there, open up the doors, and what are called dendritic cells sort of reach in, latch on to these bits of bacteria that we know we want in the breast milk for baby, and transport these babies up to into the blood, then into making the milk, then and I actually and maybe through your lymph system, I don't know, but it all comes out in the breast milk.
That's cool.
Yeah. So,
I have a question. Are there other ways?
Yes.
Ooh.
So what I maybe you haven't heard about this one, but I feel like, well, I don't know. You tell me how you feel about it, but have you heard of the term vaginal seeding?
Sounds like a euphemism to me. No, I have not heard the term vaginal seeding.
Okay, so, if you just think about, babies who are born vaginally versus cesarean. I've had at least one C-section baby. The other two were delivered vaginally. And when you have a baby...
I just want a quick math break, folks. Megan has had 3 children, birthed 3 children. We both have 2 kids from previous marriages. So she does have 5 boys, but she's only birthed 3. I just want to make sure. And those that are really paying attention are super pedantic. I want to make sure that their curiosities are satisfied. Go ahead.
Those that are super pedantic, we get you.
Yeah, we understand you. We understand you, and we're looking out for you.
So the one that was born via cesarean, right, doesn't go through the vaginal canal, and that's obvious. Although some babies do end up partially, I wonder, what are the rates of exposure to good bacteria through that vaginal canal who then also have to be born via cesarean section. Also, praise be those mothers that are basically going through both types of delivery and recovery.
Yeah. But I don't get that, because how does it enter your digestive system through your vagina?
So these are different bacteria.
Oh, okay.
And some are present, some are the same and present in both your vaginal canal and your intestines, right? So we have bacteria in our vaginal canal for, sort of maintenance. A lot of our gut microbiome is actually our functioning immune system. And so they're there in these different parts of your body, on your skin even, to ward off spells. That's a technical term. To sort of keep the good bacteria flourishing and the not so good bacteria at bay, or at least in small numbers. And so it's present in the vaginal canal, and babies who are coming down the canal are getting this exposure to it on their faces and that kind of thing. So I thought that you would find that term interesting, and just that little bit of, babies who haven't been born vaginally, moms of, C-section babies will attempt to, or have attempted to, expose their babies to the vaginal seeding mechanically. And so that might be a swab or something
I was thinking, put them back in. Sounds uncomfortable. Doesn't have to be that manual.
No.
We're really running the borderline here. This is a family-friendly show.
So,
well, by the way, while we're being a little bit unfriendly, you're talking about a new movement, and I'm like, when I think the gut and I think movements, I think something completely different. Anyway, go ahead. We can cut that.
Okay, so that's an interesting way, right? And I think it's important to sort of, acknowledge it, be aware of it, and this, this gets impacted when, for example, they swab moms for, what is it?
Pap smear?
It's for strep. It's for strep. You get swabbed at the end of your pregnancy in the 30s, some point in the 30s. I don't know if it's 32, 34, 36 weeks, somewhere around there, to see if you have the presence of group B strep. That's what it is.
In your vagina.
And your in your rectum.
Look for it everywhere.
Yeah, and the reason why is because it can lead to infections in babies, and so pretty not good outcomes. And so, especially for babies who are younger or born with some sort of challenge that just compromises them in some way. Anyway, it can also be for a perfectly healthy baby. Something goes wrong if you have group B strep. Now, that being said, it's also sometimes perfectly fine for babies to get exposed to group B strep. And what we do in this country is treat every mom who's group B strep positive with antibiotics during labor. And so then there are a lot of mixed feelings on it. The hope is, and some research does support that, the exposure for the baby goes down for the group B strep, and therefore the risk of having a poor outcome goes down. So we're protecting the life of the baby, right? But then it gets into the whole dialogue of, why do we have births in hospitals if everything's tracking normally? Couldn't we just deliver at home? The risks are low, et cetera, et cetera. And so you quickly enter, just talking about bacteria, the very extensive debate about
home birthing.
Well, agency over our bodies as women.
Wow, we're going really broad.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of do, right?
Why does it have to be about women? I can't have agency over my body as a male.
You can't.
Why we gotta narrow it down like that?
But you don't have vaginal we haven't gone down that line of thinking. And yes, you should have agency over your body too.
Theoretically.
Yeah. I mean, but don't you?
Maybe. I'd have to really analyze it.
That's a good idea. We'll spend more time on that.
No, we won't.
Sure, we can. Why can't we? I mean, unless you don't want to.
TBD.
So that's one way, right? Through the vaginal canal, sort of taking it back to the bacteria discussion so we don't get too... The hope is for these people who are interested in seeing that C-section babies are exposed to that good bacteria is that there's a way to provide that vaginal seeding or that seeding that occurs as you're coming down the canal mechanically or manually, even when you have a C-section, right? And then, okay, so switching gears. So that's one way, sort of, one very specific way that babies get exposed to bacteria. The other one is what you talked about is through the breast milk, which is like, okay, my gut microbiome is all these different things. And so these dendritic cells are reaching in, taking them out and putting them in the breast milk. There's still another, which I love, and I, always like to stress the importance of, which is skin to skin. And it's with moms and dads. So even
I have a role.
so yeah, even if you're not breastfeeding, even if you're just right away from the get-go, you are never going to put that baby to the breast. You want to do formula for whatever your reasons. That is another way you're providing your baby gut from your microbiome and sort of helping their immune system get started in the right direction. And so I thought that was pretty cool. I thought, all these different ways we're trying to expose our baby to these things. Even just like they're touching your breast, they're putting their hands in their mouth. They're just, there are a lot of ways that this is coming into their body. And that's exactly what we want, is we want their immune system essentially, or their gut microbiome to be to be started off on the right foot.
Right.
And so I find that fascinating. Have you heard of fecal transplants before?
Oh boy.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. But they, it's in some instances, your gut microbiome gets completely wiped out, whether it's chemotherapy or some other form of intense treatment on your body that kills, maybe it's intense courses of antibiotics. Yeah. Exactly. They say that the best person to do a fecal transplant with is your partner because they have the most similar microbiota. Yeah.
This is a family show, but I am intensely interested in the method of not like I'll look it up.
Yeah, I was going to say
that's something we can all look up in our own time.
Yeah. Everybody look it up in your own time.
Yeah.
But it's funny, these conversations did come up with some of my clients.
Should I get a fecal transplant?
Well, no, apparently there's
the pros and cons of fecal transplantation.
No. Apparently there's a series out right now, like a docuseries, or maybe it was just a documentary, I can't remember, on Netflix, that talks about a woman doing her own fecal transplant. Yeah, I didn't watch it. I didn't get the name of it. Maybe if any of our listeners have, they can put it in the comments.
God, that reminds me, we've talked about this
before. So Russ can get his answers.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. That reminds me of hookworms.
Yeah.
Right? And how, there's this belief among certain scientists that hookworms kind of quell, that we co-evolved with hookworms and they sort of quell the immune system. So a lot of these autoimmune disorders that are out there could be treated by the application of hookworms. Now, hookworms aren't exactly great. I think you have to take like vitamin D because they can create a vitamin D shortage. But you want to look up something about the gut and something. Yeah. And there are folks that are selling hookworms and people that are purposefully infesting themselves with hookworms because they believe this. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Yeah. It's just an interesting thing to look up.
It is. Yeah. Very, you get it when you get talking into this whole, gut health. Thing. Yeah. It's wild. It's really wild.
Yeah. One more time, just plug for him. We are no way compensated for this. Dr. Greger and his team, I think it's nutritionfacts.org.
Yeah. They cull through the research.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's basically all they do is they just sort of aggregate, hundreds of thousands of research points on everything that having to do with health, but a lot of it does point back to the gut.
Yeah. I mean, and unfortunately for us, back to vegetables.
I mean, I love a vegetable.
Yeah. But
do.
you also, you love
I love all vegetables. Well, not eggplants. No beets. No beets, no eggplants.
On these, we disagree.
Write to us and tell us what your least favorite vegetable is. I bet you we're going to get a lot of beets.
You write to us like we're
What
like here's our mailbox.
Mushrooms. Yes, they can comment.
I know, it's a cute old man way.
Yeah, sorry, by write to us. Sorry, that is sort of you can tell that I listen to
Right
a lot
into
of
the
old
show.
school NPR. Right. Send us a letter. Let us know what your least favorite vegetables are. But what do you think are top 3 least favorite vegetables? Mushrooms are going to be on there. I love mushrooms.
Yeah.
Mushrooms are going to be on there.
You mean what we're going to get or what are mine?
What we're going to get.
Okay,
from
what
our
I think we'll
viewers.
get, I think people have moved, as a culture, we've sort of moved past not liking Brussels, or the big joke being that we don't like Brussels.
Sprouts.
They've
Okay,
they've
so we're
taken
not
a
Brussels
different.
sprouts.
It's not Brussels
because we don't have a
sprouts.
lot of kids watching the show. If we had kids watching the show,
It might
we'd get
be.
a lot of broccoli and Brussels sprouts. I think.
Right.
You think we'll get any eggplant? Most people like eggplant.
I think more people will be in your onion camp than your.
I do not like. I like it. Sautéed onion. Sweat the hell out of it. I'll eat an onion.
Yeah.
But raw onions, no. Me and Scott Conant, for those of us that watch Chopped, another shameless plug. Love Chopped. Scott Conant is a judge on Chopped, and he
hates a raw onion.
He hates a raw onion.
Yeah.
And he and I are like, yeah, Scott.
Simpatico.
Yeah.
What's another one? Ooh, I don't know.
So we've excluded. You don't think Brussels sprouts? You think mushrooms will be on there?
I think
Mushrooms
beets
and onions
could be. I think
beets.
I
Oh
think.
God. Ugh.
Yeah. So top 3, mushrooms, onions, and beets. I think is probably what you're.
I'm going to probably tick off some of my southern brethren, but that is the fastest way to ruin a boiled egg.
Oh wow.
Is to make pickled beets. Ugh.
Well, I mean,
yuck.
I can't really say that I disagree.
Ugh.
Okay, so tell me your top 3 least favorite vegetables.
Well, onions, mushrooms. Not mushrooms. No, I love mushrooms. Onions, beets, and eggplants.
Onions, beets, and egg. Is that in order? Raw.
No.
You're talking about raw onions.
No. It would be beets, raw onions, and eggplant.
I love an eggplant.
I
I
know.
didn't love an eggplant, and then I had them cooked the right way, and I was like, wow.
I've had them cooked every way.
I didn't love an eggplant because when I was in high school, someone said I looked like an eggplant. Yeah.
That's good.
I mean, you'd like to be more like, okay, call me a peanut.
If you undercook eggplant, it's even worse than when
Yes.
it's cooked properly.
Yes.
But even when it's cooked properly, I don't like it. So what are your top 3?
Top 3 least favorite
Least
vegetables.
favorite vegetables. I don't even think you have them.
Mushroom.
Yeah, mushroom. Your top 3 is mushrooms?
Mushrooms. And
mushrooms. Okay. And your dad is allergic to mushrooms.
Yeah,
So that
yeah.
probably
It does, and
helped
when
develop
you
that distaste.
you made them the other night for Greek bowl night, and
Greek bowl night.
yeah, for you obviously, and not for me, and for Jackson. If he wants some, obviously, I will not pass on my disdain for mushrooms. But you even talked about the pieces with the gills being less palatable for a 2-year-old, and I'm like, gills? I don't want my plants that I eat to have gills.
It's really weird you say that because, so I try to do these, vegan nights with you, or at least vegetarian nights with you, when we don't have all the boys. It's just there are nights when it's just Megan and I and the littlest guy, because all 4 other boys are with their respective other parents. And on those nights I try to eat vegan or at least vegetarian, and the closest approximation in the natural world to meat to me is a mushroom. That's part of its appeal.
I can see that, but I will tell you, I completely disagree with you. I think the closest approximation, and not just because of the protein content, is a bean.
You aren't wrong there. A bean's good.
I mean, I will eat beans any way they are made. Gigantes.
Favorite bean.
I just saw gigantes in Wegmans the other day, and I was like, why haven't I been living off of these?
Is that what gigantes are?
No, those are just so quick and easy for like grab a big, large,
Yeah.
well-seasoned bean.
Yeah.
I would probably have to say
So you're talking
my
about
favorite
preparation.
refritos are the pinto variety.
Pinto refritos, okay. My favorite bean in any variety is definitely a chickpea.
Well, now I was going to
Hummus,
say, if you're
roasted.
talking about in all its different like if there was a bean, like for example, pinto is not my favorite bean.
Yeah.
Refried beans of the pinto variety are my favorite of all the beans.
Yeah.
However, my favorite individual bean is hands down a garbanzo.
Yeah.
Hands down.
Some people like garbanzos. I'm not a big fan. I like chickpeas.
You're a nerd.
That's just my personal preference. I don't know why you're laughing at me. Seriously though, guys, pro tip, something I just recently learned. You can roast garbanzos.
With jalapenos.
Oh, with jalapenos even better, yeah. But any kind of flavoring you want, you can roast them in the oven.
You just reminded me
and
that
you
we
get
have
this-
that in the refrigerator
Yeah,
right
you
now.
get this crunchy snack.
Yeah.
And you don't have to make it. You could literally take it down to like the consistency of like a peanut if you roast it long enough. But you don't even have to. You don't even have to do that. You can just roast it for a little bit so you get a little crunch on the outside, like 425,
Firmness, some
450
firmness.
oven
Yeah.
for not too long. But, really pay attention to it, shake it around, and you get a really good little snack with a roasted chickpea. In fact, I'm getting a little hungry for chickpea right now. I might have to go with some of that spicy hummus in the fridge.
Well, that's what I was going to... Oh, well, there's spicy hummus, and then there's the chickpeas that you made 2 nights ago with the jalapenos in them. There are the chickpeas that you made with the jalapenos in
I
them.
like the Greek seasoning.
And the tzatziki
Little
sauce in
olive
there.
oil.
I found that that's like the perfect 1-2 combo. If I'm not looking to make a whole Greek bowl, you just take those beans and dip them in the tzatziki. And
Homemade tzatziki sauce. How do you say that? Let's debate
Tzatziki.
that. Is it tzatziki?
I say tzatziki. I don't know what it is.
Is it tzatziki? If you're Greek and you're watching the show, don't comment if you're not Greek. But if you're Greek and you're watching the show, or you have a Greek background, please teach us how to say tzatziki.
Teach us the ways of the word.
Is it tzatziki? Is it tzatziki? Is it tzatziki or tzatziki or whatever? Whatever you tell us.
Educate us. Beans. We were talking about beans.
beans.
What's your favorite bean? I mean, of a garbanzo bean, of beans, I've never met a more versatile bean than a garbanzo.
Yeah, I mean they're all versatile. I like a bean.
Hummus.
Why narrow it down?
I like
Why not have a 5-bean chili?
a 5-bean chili is good, and it like for me, I'm not a big fan of a pinto on its own. Love it with kidneys.
So bringing it back to the conversation, talk
Yeah.
about how beans are good for the
microbiome.
For the microbiome.
So interestingly, now you got me back on the, okay, so interestingly, if you, obviously, everybody knows if you eat beans sparingly, you might have some reactions, ones that the boys love. In fact, on nights when we have beans, they want to eat as much as they can so that they can flame out their brothers later. Yeah, so it's like a competition in the house when they're doing it. For me, I like to eat them 2-3 times a day. And once you get over about 3 weeks of exposing yourself to at least, I think it's like at least a cup of beans a day or half a cup of beans a day, something like that. One every day, then, 3 weeks of doing that, your body sort of adjusts, your microbiome changes to be able to more easily break down these beans and,
And you're
you
kind
don't
of
quite have the
feeding
same
the
reactions.
good bacteria, starving the bacteria that's not as good for you.
Yes. And so it just flourishes. And so obviously that's why I eat beans is for the health benefits, but it's also just a good sort of meat substitute. Now, so all of this talk about diet for adults is sort of parlays back into the breast milk conversation in that there was a study done about, so lactobacillus, I'm going to butcher it, reuteri, reuteri, has been shown in infants to decrease those gassy symptoms, those digestive issues, that upset. That specific strain has been shown to have great outcomes in newborns.
Okay. And how do you get this?
You can get it as an adult, right? And you're like we were talking about. So if mom's got it in her gut microbiome, we can sort of rely on her system to be transporting it into the breast milk. But what the research is proving out is that you really have to have exposure to a lot of fermented foods. Sourdough bread has it, which I find interesting given it's gone through the cooking process and it's still intact, right? But so do other
Does that
fermented
include
foods.
everything with sour? Like sauerkraut, sour cream?
I don't know the specific foods. I do know cheese. Weird things came up while I was researching it. I think sweet potatoes. So I think most of the fermented foods are going to have it.
Well, you know what my favorite fermented food is? Bourbon. Well, it's a product of fermentation, ultimately.
I don't think it has lactobacillus reuteri in it.
No, I can't
No.
drink bourbon and get
Sorry.
that.
Sorry to disappoint you.
Well, I'm going to drink bourbon anyway.
You're probably going to drink it anyway.
Yeah.
So you can take the boy out of Kentucky, but you can't take the Kentucky out of the boy.
Amen, sister. Horses and bourbon.
Speaking of which, the Derby was fun Saturday.
Oh, God. It was good.
Jackson was born 2 years ago on the Derby.
Yeah?
On Derby Day.
Yeah. We got all dressed up in ridiculous outfits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I digress. So the research says moms who have fermented food in their diets have more of this bacteria in their milk. And the country with the highest prevalence of it in their breast milk was actually Japan. And if you think about the fermented foods that they eat, that makes sense.
Yeah.
40% of moms had it in their milk. Now, other countries that also eat fermented food had it. Like 15% of moms had it.
It got to be Korea. I mean, with all that kimchi.
Maybe I didn't look further. Japan really stuck out at me.
Another place.
Some
that really
Nordic
likes
countries. Some Nordic countries.
Oh, they probably use
Fermentation for a lot of
way
the
to preserve food. I don't know much about the Nordic.
But I
countries.
have to imagine there was nothing on the United States specifically with respect to that bacteria in breast milk. But my guess is the standard American diet doesn't exactly support a thriving presence of lactobacillus reuteri. So all of that to say, if you're looking to incorporate that in your diet, obviously you can up those fermented foods.
So up those fermented foods, things like extra pickles at Burger King.
No.
That would be up.
It's not near enough.
Oh.
Like kefir, for example. Now, if you're doing this because you're concerned your baby has a cow's milk protein allergy, obviously don't do that. Don't eat cheese. But these types of foods that have intentionally been encouraged to grow mold, yogurt, kefir, cheese, sauerkraut, kimchi, and then other ones like
beer.
I don't know if it's present in beer. I don't know. That's a good question. That's something worth looking into.
That'd be the best. I mean, to me, the purpose of beer is so you can distill it to make
whiskey.
But I would imagine if you drink it in that state,
we're gonna have to have a whole other conversation about
fermentation.
Well, I was going to say safety of drinking alcohol while breastfeeding.
Yeah. That's got to be for another show. Yeah. But boy, will I contribute to that one.
Okay, so anyway, all of that to say, if you're dealing with like the cow's milk protein allergy concern, be cognizant of the foods that you're choosing. But for example, the reason I think sweet potato has that bacteria present, and potentially maybe white potatoes do too, I don't know, is because they've got to have that skin that's antimicrobial, antifungal, because they're growing underground. They're a root vegetable. So I wonder if that parlays for other root vegetables as well.
But you rarely eat the skin on a sweet potato.
I would.
Do you ever eat the skin on a sweet potato?
Like a French fry sweet potato or
Usually when you get French fried sweet potatoes, they take the skin off before they do that. Now on a white potato, 100%, I love the skin. But it's so tough on a sweet potato.
Well, maybe it goes inside. Maybe. Maybe it goes inside the skin and into the sweet potato. Anyway,
if you know more about how sweet potatoes contribute to the gut biome, please comment. I'm just trying to do the YouTube thing. Comment, like,
Write in a letter.
Write us in a letter. feel like car talk, click and clack.
Actually-
Who knows Click and Clack? The Tappet Brothers.
I don't.
It's an old NPR show. It's great.
But I will tell you, it's a good time to plug our email address. Our email address is themilkproductionpodcast@gmail.com.
Wow.
Someone-
Why do we have to put the... Someone else already had the...
Someone
milk production?
and I was kind of like, well, you didn't buy the website because I have that, haven't made it yet, but I have that.
Yeah.
So what'd you do? You just look at websites people bought recently and made a Gmail out of it?
I don't know. Thief.
That's sus.
Totally legal.
I know. Anyway,
Send him an email. Offer him $15 in a Starbucks gift card.
they will laugh in my face.
Maybe.
Oh yeah. Okay. So that's our email. You can always write into us. For those of you who are good friends with us, you can text us. Continue to text us your funny comments or your impressions or whatever. We appreciate those.
Thank you for Stephanie at work.
Stephanie listens.
Stephanie listens.
Aw.
And she made some comments last time that kind of helped contribute to the show. So shout out to Stephanie at work.
You didn't tell me Stephanie
One
listens.
of the best people I've ever worked with, ever.
That's so great. Clancy.
Clancy.
Our girl
Thanks,
Clancy
Clancy.
listens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, obviously, there's an extensive
Hope
list
of
of
the
people,
family.
but we're excited and touched when people are taking their time to listen to our show. If you don't know, now you know. We are on Instagram at The Milk Production. YouTube, obviously, if you're watching this video, you know we're at YouTube at The Milk Production. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, Amazon,
Netflix?
FeedSpot.
FeedSpot. Netflix?
No,
Hulu?
no.
Oh, no Netflix, no Hulu.
Maybe in the future. That would be so cool.
Yeah. That's when we really freaking made it.
Hashtag podcast goals.
Yeah. Prime Video, not so much. But if we make it to Hulu or Netflix,
We done it.
ooh,
We done it.
ooh, you're going to see this background change.
I like how that's the first thing. So we hit a lot of the things that first come to mind when you're talking about the gut microbiome and as it relates to feeding and newborns and all that kind of fun stuff. But we have not, I don't even think we've actually scratched the surface. You could say we've just scratched the surface, but I think we've just seen the tip of the iceberg, maybe, I mean, that's a whole world of, for me, wildly entertaining, probably somewhat nerdy, fascinating aspect of our health. So hopefully we can dive into that more.
Yeah. I mean, that's the idea here, right? We explore some nerdy things, but certainly we want this show to be practical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a little nerdy. That's ultimately the goal. So thanks for listening. I'm hoping next week we are going to do what I believe is going to be a little bit called the feeding frenzy.
Feeding frenzy.
And that is going to highlight a real live mom who tells us about her feeding journey. And, my plan for it is not that it has to be breast or bottle, just, hey, this is what I originally planned. Then I had a baby. These are the obstacles I ran into. This is what I did to overcome them. And this is how I got comfortable with my feeding plan. Just so you all can hear different experiences and, I don't know, hopefully feel validated in your own.
Yeah.
That's ultimately the goal. Feel that positive energy of just knowing that, even when you hit some obstacles and you're trying to figure out what to do with your baby and all that kind of stuff, you can, there's light at the end of the tunnel. There's a solution that works for your family.
Amen.
Even when it's tough.
Well, thanks for joining us for the Milk Production.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
As always, I'm Russ Rakestraw.
And I'm Megan Selke.
We will see you next week.
Yay.